Marry me.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Alright, we're back on the coverage of Becoming Elizabeth today. Just getting my notebook out with all the notes I took. Yes, this is a double bill this week because last week I sort of got my entire schedule thrown off when I missed a day because I had to go to A&E or the emergency room last week. And it was not fun. I was there for 12 hours. Blame the Tories. Yes, so this is me covering episode 4 and 5, and if you're wondering why I'm not doing this in front of the camera this week, I woke up this morning and I realised it's been very, very hot the past couple of days. It's going to continue to be very, very hot for the next couple weeks at least, and I don't want to wear foundation in that heat. It's like maybe next week I'll feel better about it, but this week I'm just like, it's just too hot to really assemble anything. Plus, it's pretty overcast today, so it would be a bitch to light this room. It's really hard to light this room sometimes. There's only so much I can do in post. So I am going to give commentary and I'll feature screenshots of the episodes where I'm giving my points. Either the images between that you're going to see are me speed painting or playing Tomb Raider, or if I can be bothered to get up at all, I'll be maybe walking around a park. One of those three. Regarding my health, I'm okay now. I'll talk about it a little later into the episode because, funnily enough, it's relevant to a plot point that happens in episode 4. I mean, I didn't break anything and I wasn't hemorrhaging. It was just, I was in a gargantuan amount of pain. And I don't think it has anything to do with the series. But if it is, I'm not surprised. I think it's just the after effects of COVID. So let's talk about episode 4 of Becoming Elizabeth, which... I thought it was going to get better after Catharine died, but it's just been getting so much worse. Just kill Thomas Seymour. Kill him. So episode 4 was called Light in Our Darkness. Light in Our Darkness, not Light in Our Darkness. And literally after I'd written, I'm not sure how it fits into the context of the episode, it then struck me that the title referred to what lightens the darkness for the 3 Tudor siblings. What lightens the darkness for Mary, her faith in God, and knowing she has the backing of the English Catholics? What lightens Elizabeth's darkness, her faith in herself and Robert Dudley? And what lightens Edward's darkness? Nothing. He's going to be left with nothing by the end of this. He doesn't have a confidant, and his siblings are treading on eggshells trying not to offend him. That's actually kind of sad. My worst fears have been realised where the episode confirms that Elizabeth did indeed go to bed with Thomas Seymour before Catharine caught them and sent Elizabeth away. And I just want to... oh my god. All those scenes where it went blurry at the end, it meant what I feared. Oh god. It's absolutely sickening. Like, this should not be romantic. The fact that it's even a little bit romantic, it makes me want to scream. Elizabeth is 14 going on 15. Thomas Seymour is in his 40s. How old is Tom Cullen, by the way? Okay, Tom Cullen is currently 36. But even then, even if Thomas Seymour was 36, that would still be fricked up. So they aged up Elizabeth and they aged down Thomas Seymour to make it look more okay, but they confirmed that she is 15. And just all those ideas of him luring her in and then she's kissing him. Thomas Seymour is now a confirmed paedophile. I know that a lot of people are going to say, like, oh, but it was the Tudor era, it was okay to do this at the time. And I just thought, yeah, like, just because it was legal at the time doesn't mean it was good. I mean, slavery was legal once. Some parts of the world it still is. Do you think that's okay? Do you think it's okay for any grown man who's old enough to be Elizabeth's father to be making sexual advances on her? Remember, he made the sexual advances. She didn't. It's not like she started going, oh, I want to be with you, and he was just like, no, 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 and pushing her away. This is some bloody Humbert stuff right here. Imagine, if you will, that this story was taking place in the modern day. Would you really then want to feature a love story between a 15-year-old and a 40-year-old? And believe me, it gets worse in the next episode. There's a quill in the credit sequence this time, and I'm guessing that just refers to, well, it's a feather quill, or it's a feather even, but I'm just going to assume that refers to the letters that Elizabeth wrote to Catherine Parr, which Catherine Parr never replied to. In real life, Catherine and Elizabeth communicated through letters while Catherine was at Sudeley and Elizabeth was staying with Cat Ashley's sister's family. I can't remember what their last names were, but the man was called Sir Anthony. And then after Catherine died, Elizabeth went to Hatfield. Well, on the bright side of that about this episode is they've listened to me, at least, and they've started filming some scenes in different locations, not just Haddon Hall. Although they go back to Haddon Hall in episode 5, but I guess they're using Haddon Hall for the gardens at Chelsea and then Whitehall as well as Mary's residence. But yeah, I can still recognise Haddon Hall. It's just, I'm not going to go into another rant. I've been doing that. I've been doing that for the past 3 videos, saying, God's sake, there's more places than Haddon Hall. There are 2 main conflicts in the 4th episode. Elizabeth's is that she has a pregnancy scare because, remember, she and Thomas have been confirmed to have been together at least more than once, and her period is late, so she just takes it to mean that she's up the duff. That's what we British call knocked up. And it's strange because even though Catherine Ashley confirms that Elizabeth usually has irregular periods, like a lot of women have irregular periods, she misses one period and then she assumes, oh crap, I'm pregnant. Then towards the end of the episode, she goes to the loo, as it were, and she's like, oh, blood. And I was like, what, you just started bleeding all of a sudden? You didn't have menstrual cramps? I had to actually check that the writer wasn't a man, because if it was written by a man, I'd understand he probably just assumes that one day blood just shows up. But it's not. It was written by Anya Rice, who I assume is a cisgender woman. And I just wonder, oh, so you're telling me that Elizabeth just one day started bleeding and beforehand she didn't have any menstrual cramps and she didn't have any mood swings, she didn't feel gross, she wasn't retaining water, she wasn't getting a little bit of back pain, just she just starts bleeding. Well, good for her. Yes, I sound bitter because when I was admitted to the hospital last week, it turns out what I thought was either endometriosis or a kidney stone was menstrual cramps that were so damn painful I thought I was dying, and literally no painkillers were working. They had to give me morphine. I know that's not normal, but I don't know what else to do. Yes, I'm pretty just jealous of Elizabeth, like, because it's just like, oh, you just stop bleeding, you don't have really painful cramps that stop me from doing anything. Sometimes mine get so painful I literally cannot do anything. And sometimes in the middle of editing audio or doing a video sequence, and then suddenly I get such a bad pain I have to go and lie down. Yes, and the other conflict in the episode is, again, the religious aspects of England banishing all forms of Catholicism and Mary resisting against it, because the episode opens, well, at some point in the episode it opens, with a priest in his study, and then he hears a commotion, he comes out, and a hired goon, for lack of a better term, smacks him in the face with a cross, which either gouges his eye out or it just slices the eye open. He basically loses an eye. I guess that's a reference to an eye for an eye makes the world blind. And Mary goes and sees the damage and consoles the priest, and then she decides that she is going to be a figurehead for the Catholic. She is going to hold a mass for Catherine after she dies. And yeah, just more Mary scenes, please. She's someone who's come out the other side of her father's reign and being completely free of manipulations and other people's fancies. I love this version of Mary. So I agree with Claire Ridgway when she said that this series should be about Mary. It shouldn't be about Elizabeth. We've had enough of Elizabeth dramas. We need more Mary. Because right now the only piece of Tudor media that is solely about Mary is The Twisted Tale of Bloody Mary, which is god-awful. Catherine Parr's death, I don't want to get into too much detail about it because Obviously, I'm still working on the ranking script, but it was just too clean. Like, you don't see her give birth, just we cut one day to Thomas coming in and Lady Jane Grey's holding little baby Mary Seymour, and they're like, oh yeah, we've got a baby now, and Tom's like, I'm not going to be a douche anymore, I promise. And she's like, don't write checks your ass can't cash. Is that the phrase? She's like, don't promise me, like anyone can make promises. Deeds, not words. And then Tom goes down the, but I said Tom goes down the pub. He literally like probably goes down to the wine cellars with his mates, has a couple drinks, comes back upstairs, and Catherine is not only dead, she's been wrapped up in a shroud and being prepared for burial. That's not how childbed fever works. I want to compare it with Jane Seymour's death in The Tudors. Not only was her birth like long and complicated, but her death from childbed fever was slow and painful as well. And Catherine literally just pegs it off screen in the time it took for Tom to go downstairs for a pint. Given that childbed fever is like, it leads to septicemia, which is a long and painful form of blood poisoning, and Tom, who, remember, has a sister who died in childbirth, would surely have known that something was wrong before Catherine died. I guess they just really wanted to get rid of Catherine as soon as possible. Couldn't get rid of her quickly enough, could you? Yeah, another good Mary scene is where Mary shows up to wherever Elizabeth's staying. I can't remember the name of the place. Mary's trying to save her sister's reputation by saying, let's go to court together and we'll show the world that... Oh, sorry, I had to pause there. My mother just got a cold caller. She's telling them to F off. Elizabeth is about to confide in Mary what's been going down, but Mary's like, no, don't tell me. Because she says, look, even though I'm your sister, you can't trust me because the conflict runs too deep. If I know that you've done something wrong, I might want to use that against you in the future. She knows how to play the game, does Mary. I don't think the series is going to win a BAFTA, but we need to give Romola some kind of recognition. Maybe we could make a Mary the First movie and then cast Romola in it. I'd like that. You know, like how when they made the Mary Queen of Scots movie, they got Glenda Jackson to reprise her role as Elizabeth. Honestly, when Mary regards Thomas Seymour, it's like she almost seems fit to murder him. That's why I put in my community post that if I was Mary, Thomas would be my first Protestant burning. Instead of calling her Bloody Mary in the future, everyone would call her Relatable Mary. I'm just sorry that she's not the one to cut his head off. And then after Elizabeth has done her pregnancy scare, she goes back to court after inheriting Chelsea, which she didn't inherit, but they need to reuse the sets, I guess. And then she goes in, she gives contrition to Edward, and Edward takes her back, and she's clearly dressed for the part. She's wearing black in mourning of Catherine. Her neckline has been completely covered. Her shift is up around her neck, so there's literally nothing that could show that she is any way like her mother. She is a pious Christian woman, ready to serve her Lord and King. And then Edward takes her hands and he pretty much says, then we are friends again, and has her sit next to him. And then Thomas Seymour lurks in and says, marry me. And Elizabeth sort of looked as if she was over Tom in that scene. I know I'm wrong because of what happens in the next episode, but it looked like during her banishment and then her little scene with Mary and her later scene with Robert Dudley, she comes back and tells Robert Dudley, like, look, the girl I was, the naive little girl, she's dead now. And then Tom comes in and says, marry me. I expected her to literally just, like, raise her fist and, like, just punch him from behind like Legolas did in Two Towers. It's what I would have done. Yeah, so I thought she had overcome that infatuation and she was a lot more and she was a lot more mature now and realising that he wasn't actually after her because remember, he stayed behind. He stayed with Catherine while Catherine sent her away. Surely something has disillusioned her. But no, as you'll see in episode 5, Necessity Compels Me to Plague You. I like that title. It does sound like something William Cecil or Francis Walsingham would say. Or maybe Robert Cecil further down the line. I realised that every time Thomas walked in a room, I just sighed. Like, he literally comes into the room and I'm like, ah. We were having a really nice scene, Thomas. Why did you have to ruin it? Thomas is still terrible. He's camping outside Elizabeth's house, in the gardens, waiting for her to let him in, until she does because it's raining. I mean, if I was Elizabeth, because Elizabeth must have owned at least, like, Elizabeth's supposed to be staying in Chelsea, but Hatfield exists. So if I was Elizabeth, I would have, while Thomas was over at court, swearing in the Privy Council chamber, I would have just slipped away back to Hatfield, but make it look like that Chelsea is still occupied, so he's sitting out there for like weeks and then not realising that Elizabeth was at Hatfield the entire time. That would have been funny. But anyway, she lets him in, and it's creepy again. It's not romantic. She is 15, and it was just like, oh my god, please take me back to that fireplace scene in Attack of the Clones, please. I suddenly found new value in that series now, because it makes you realise, well, the dialogue might not be very good, but at least those two characters were of consenting age. I wish I could just wish away this awful scene. I just keep reminding myself, she is 15. She is 15. And here I was being angry at young Bess for having just a platonic romance between Thomas and Elizabeth. Oh, God. Yeah, I was right about episode 2. That was Guilford Dudley, who Robert Dudley was talking to. So he's going to become relevant in the next couple episodes. We also see the beginnings of the Prayer Book Rebellion. I think that's the Prayer Book Rebellion. Is that? Because it starts in Norfolk. It's been a long time since I looked at Tudor rebellions. Okay. Well, the Prayer Book Rebellion started in Cornwall and Devon. I think there was a time in Henry VII's reign where Cornwall wanted to break off from England and be its own kingdom, and people actually spoke Cornish. Yeah, the Cornish Rebellion of 1497. Kett's Rebellion, that's it, I think. Yes, Kett's Rebellion. This is Kett's Rebellion, not the Prayer Book Rebellion. I had to check that. Yes, because you even have Robert Kett standing under the tree and calling for people to resist Protestantism. And then the note under this said, this music, this bloody music. Yeah, I haven't mentioned the music thus far, but I really don't like the music. A lot of it's synthesised, so it does sound very anachronistic. For a few scenes where it's like, heavy beats as people are walking in through the dark corridors, that sort of works. But when you can start to hear that it's synthesised, it does remind you that you're watching a drama. You're not looking through a time window into history. I know that sounds weird, but like when you consider Henry VIII and his 6 wives and Anne of the Thousand Days and Mary Queen of Scots, all those great historical movies, they tended to use actual music from the time period, or if they didn't have that, then it would be dramatic strings. Then later, one thing I should note about the politics of the scenes is that Edward Seymour has sold Boulogne to the French in order to win the rough wooing against Scotland, and he doesn't tell Edward about it. But Edward finds out because Sir Pedro, who is secretly a double agent, originally hired by Somerset to spy on Mary, has now pledged his full loyalty to Mary. And so Mary lets Edward know. And then Edward's not very happy about that. And he finds out via Bishop Gardiner. And at that point, when he looks up, he's sitting at his little desk and he looks up and he's talking to Gardiner. I just had to wonder, where is Thomas Cranmer in this? Thomas Cranmer matters, doesn't he? I understand in the Tudors they cut Cranmer out of the next 2 seasons because Hans Matheson didn't come back, because I think he had other commitments. He was doing Test of the D'Urbervilles, and because the Tudors was filming in Ireland, those kinds of series do take a long time to film. It was a matter of scheduling conflict. That's why some characters in the Tudors sort of disappeared, and it was the same for Game of Thrones. A lot of characters just disappeared, or they didn't come back for seasons at a time. And then I made a prediction where I bet episode 7 is going to end with Edward Seymour's execution, because episode 6 is going to have Tom Seymour's execution. So episode 7 is going to play catch up over the next 3 years until Edward Seymour's head's on the block. And then episode 8 is probably going to end with Edward's death and Lady Jane Grey being declared queen all of a sudden. So if there is a season 2, the first episode will probably be Lady Jane Grey's 9-day rule. Yes, I want to talk about Sir Pedro later down the line, but I do like his character, and it's kind of interesting to show, like, Britain was never all white. There was always a bustling diversity, but people who lived in more isolated places where they'd never really gone outside their village would probably be a bit uncomfortable seeing someone who didn't have the same skin colour as them. And even Sir Pedro says, what, have you never been down to the docks? Yeah, because you've got people coming in from Africa and India selling their wares, and spice traders. Another note I said was, everyone except Mary seems to have such a short temper ever since episode 1. Every bloody Privy Council scene ends with someone shouting their head off, like it's a dysfunctional family Christmas. Yeah, Mary seems to keep calm all the time. More swearing, I'm so bored. Yeah, I'm bored of all the swearing. It's like they have a quota. I mean, I swear in my videos, but those are usually spur of the moment, and because of YouTube's monetization rules, I tend to keep them on the down low unless I get really, really angry in an unscripted video. But even then, I space them out. I don't, like, fire them out all at once, and if there is a better way of saying it, then I'd try not to. And for those of you who've seen the episode already, there is a scene where the only note I wrote was, if I was writing these notes in pencil, this would be where it snapped. And for those of you who haven't seen it, so Thomas comes to Chelsea. Oh, I should have mentioned beforehand that Elizabeth has agreed to marry Thomas so long as they get the blessing of the council, because she doesn't want to get married in secret and then grovel for the king's forgiveness like Thomas and Catharine had to do. She wants the full blessing of the council, but of course Edward Seymour is just like, nope. So Thomas comes up with a plan to abduct Edward and marry him to Lady Jane Grey, and then once he has the king, they're going to go to Chelsea, get Elizabeth, so there can be like a secret double wedding. And basically he goes to Chelsea just to confirm with Elizabeth that they're going to get married soon. And Cat Ashley, being either the best or worst wingman ever, gets everyone in Elizabeth's room to go downstairs. Elizabeth takes Thomas into the chamber, and it seems Elizabeth has doubled back on her character arc from the last episode. She is 15, Thomas. She is 15. And it's another one of those scenes where they just jump straight into it. There's no foreplay or anything. That must be so fucking painful. Then he leaves to go and carry out his plan, and he says he'll be back later. And Elizabeth's in such a good mood. I can't think why. And she says, everyone, let's go downstairs and dance. And all of a sudden, oh my god, actual Tudor music played on the harpsichord, or the virginals, one of the two, and dancing around all Tudor-like, and flutes and that, and then suddenly we cut to Thomas arriving at Whitehall, and all that lovely Tudor music is drowned out by the non-diegetic music. I think we all need to sit through the soundtrack to Henry VIII and his 6 wives. Yeah, if you can hear something in the background, a neighbour's using power tools. It's very rude of them. Although the dancing scene where she's like with her household and enjoying it, it does remind me of that scene in The Tudors just before Catherine Howard gets arrested. And then we get the titular lantern from the credits scene, because in the credits in this episode there was a lantern. And then Thomas is like, he flashes his gun to his page who's with him, who's looking after the horses, and his page looks so shocked. He's like, what are you doing with that gun? I thought we were going to McDonald's. And then we get Thomas Seymour's botched kidnapping of Edward VI. I'm not sure if Robert Dudley was actually there, but it's okay for dramatic reasons, because this actually does work. It's the first we've seen of Edward's dog, and I think the dog was a spaniel. So yeah, what happened was Thomas Seymour came in through a private entrance, and then the second he came in, the dog sensed him and started barking madly, and Thomas, in a panic, either he shot the dog or he stabbed the dog or he beat the dog to death, and this commotion alerted the presence of the guards. There's only one version of this on screen. That was at the beginning of Elizabeth R, where once everyone was alerted, Edward saw what had happened and he was pretty emotionless about it, and he was just like, off to the tower with you, uncle. Yeah, we haven't seen this dog of Edward's before. I think that's sort of a missed opportunity there to show his humanity. Imagine that dog is a symbol of Edward's innocence. Like, you could have had scenes of him where Somerset is trying to educate him on the matters of state, and Edward's just a bit too busy having fun playing with his dog, playing fetch, or the dog's just rolling over and being like, I want my belly rubbed. And then the fact that Thomas Seymour, who was the uncle he sort of preferred, killed that dog, that's like the end of Edward's innocence. That's the end of his childhood. That's where he realises everyone is using you. And Thomas tries to pretend that he was testing the security of the palace, and he's about to storm out, but Robert Dudley's not having it. He goes after Tom, and Tom punches him and pushes him down the stairs, and it seems as though Thomas was about to get away, but because Robert was taking advantage of a loophole in court law, where in court if you punch someone you were in trouble, basically. And so Robert was basically deliberately baiting Thomas Seymour into punching him. So that's what makes the guards take him away, and that's how the scandal gets realised. And I'm just like, I hate Thomas even more for hurting Robert Dudley. Like, you don't dare hurt my boy. And then the very next day, a contingent of guards and John Dudley arrive at Chelsea to arrest Elizabeth, Cat Ashley and William Parry, who has not appeared thus far. But just before they arrive, Elizabeth is schooled by Sir Anthony, Cat Ashley's brother-in-law, that she has to feign ignorance and pretend that she has nothing to do with Thomas Seymour's plot. I think in real life what happened was the guards came to Hatfield during the night, and then they took William Parry and Cat Ashley away to the tower while Elizabeth was still asleep, and then she comes downstairs, and that's when she realised that they'd been gone and there were interrogators there. At least Elizabeth knows how to lie, and she wasn't arrested. She wasn't formally arrested, she was just interrogated at Hatfield. And that's where the episode ends. And on the bright side, the next episode is probably going to end with Thomas Seymour's execution. And I've got to think of all the memes I can to celebrate. Maybe if I do this next vlog in front of the camera, I can get like a glass of champagne. So overall, I've been looking at a lot of other historical YouTubers' opinions on this series. And the overall opinion seems to be that we all love the stuff that involves Edward and Mary and Somerset and all the stuff pertaining to religious conflict and all that sort of stuff. But every time Elizabeth and Thomas are in the scene, it just feels like the quality is completely dragged down, because they are trying to present this story of sexual abuse and grooming as a romantic story. And it's sickening. It's absolutely sickening. We should know better in 2022. It was one thing to do it in 1953, or whatever year it was that Margaret Irwin wrote the novel of Young Bess. Let me just check. I've got the book right here. Tried to read it last week when I was in the emergency room, but it was so hot and loud in there I just could not concentrate. And the quality of the material wasn't that great either. First published 1944. Okay, so yeah, Elizabeth. So it's one thing to have that love story be there in 1944 or 1953, because we were not as aware then as we are now when it comes to sexual abuse. It still was pretty gross to imagine that this was trying to be a love story. We should know better. In the Queen's Gambit, which is being adapted into the movie Firebrand because there's already a Netflix series called The Queen's Gambit, it's about Catharine Parr, and then towards the end of the novel it's during her marriage to Thomas Seymour, and Thomas is vilified a lot more for what he does to Elizabeth. Elizabeth is pretty unsympathetic in that story, but Catharine is obviously, she's concerned for her stepdaughter's safety and sends her away. But then again, like, the scenes where Elizabeth is shown to be bratty are through the eyes of a character that doesn't like her, so we could argue bias. But even then, it's like, it's treated like this is a horrible thing to be happening. And overall, now that I've had 5 episodes, now we're over the halfway point, I really don't like this portrayal of Elizabeth. I mean, it's not the actress's fault. Sometimes your performance is only as good as your script. But this doesn't feel like Elizabeth. She is just so stupid and quivery and meek. This is supposed to be Lady Jane Grey, right? I feel like Jane Grey and Elizabeth's personalities have been switched. Elizabeth is very headstrong and outspoken, but she doesn't reveal her feelings. Whereas this version of Elizabeth is way too open with her feelings. And then for every good scene that we get of her sort of resembling her real life counterpart, we get about 8 scenes of her doing this quivery voice, and I don't know what's good for me because I'm very stupid, even though I'm supposed to be a child prodigy. I don't understand why people act like this. I don't understand, but I love you, Thomas, even though I really shouldn't. Oh no. That's what she sounds like. So even if we're on a scene where it's just Elizabeth, even that's not very enjoyable compared with Romola. Hopefully, now that we're going to kill off Thomas Seymour, things are going to get better. Hopefully there is not going to be a sex scene where Elizabeth bloody goes to the bloody Tower of London, a bloody bang bloody Thomas bloody Seymour in the bloody tower. Anyway, those excuses for a migraine are over, and we got 3 episodes left. And I'm just wondering, like, if you guys like these vlogs, should I do the same thing with Rain? Because eventually I'm going to have to watch Rain, because eventually I want to do a Mary Queen of Scots rankings. So should I do the same thing with Rain and then do a Mary Queen of Scots rankings? Let me know. Until the next vlog, which hopefully I'll do in front of the camera, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sorry for not presenting myself today, it just wasn't feeling it. If you want to make sure you don't miss the next vlog, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and you can help boost this video by leaving a like and commenting and sharing it round. And also you can support the channel by becoming a patron. Head on over to the link in the description and you can get your name in the credits, and higher tiers can get you an earlier look at scripts and videos before they get released on YouTube. And the highest level contributors, the King and Queen patrons, they get a shout out in the credits, just like Anastasia Gracia, Alison Cuff, Larissa, Lady Eternal and Leslie Williams. Oh my god, it's so hot right now. Yeah, this weekend I was filming the in front of the camera stuff for the next 4 Titanic videos, and it got to the point where I was just like, I gotta stop, I'm too sweaty. But I'll see you next time, and I really hope you enjoyed the video, and even if you're not enjoying the series, I hope you're enjoying me bitching about it. See you next time.